Hello, and welcome to the Social Psychic Radio Show featuring Jason Zook. In uncertain times, we must change our focus and priorities. This show will highlight social justice issues with the goal of expanding minds and increasing unity, love, and mutual respect for ourselves and our planet. We support the Black Lives Matter movement. Our show aspires to promote social spirituality, which simply means that by coming together, we can solve any of our problems, including the goal of bringing an end to all forms of hate, discrimination, bias, or oppression. We must protect our environment, reform our criminal justice system, and protect every citizen from police brutality. When we come together, it becomes possible to bridge the gaps that plague our society and divide us from within. We the people means everyone.
Hello and welcome to the Social Psychic Radio Show. This is Jason Zook. It's a great pleasure I have the opportunity of presenting special guest Hema Vyas to the show today. Hema is an omnipreneurial psychologist, corporate wellness and life membership mentor, keynote speaker, facilitator and author, philanthropist and heart whisperer. Hema is a renowned speaker on heart wisdom, human consciousness, spirituality, health energy medicine, and the science of Ayurveda. And for almost 30 years, she's been practicing as a psychologist and life leadership mentor. Clients credit Hema with providing needle-turning solutions to the previously unsolvable and sometimes invisible problems while creating the space to surface hidden opportunities. Hema works with individuals, corporations, startups, and diverse global audiences to bring about an alignment in heart, mind, and body intelligence for optimal creativity, critical thinking, and cohesion. It's a great pleasure. I welcome Hema to the show. Welcome to the show, Hema.
Hi there, Jason. Great to be here today. Thanks a lot for having me.
And where are you located right now? Where are you?
I'm in London.
I love the UK. I love London. Been there 4 times. One of my favorite places in the world to visit, the British Museum. I could get lost there for a year.
It's amazing. Yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
I want to ask you, what is an omnipreneur? Because that's a unique term that I haven't heard before.
I think it's a new generation of people who are really coming into their power, entrepreneurs at heart, but, they can also be in the corporate world. They can be an employee working in an organization or their own independent business, an entrepreneur. But it's really about people who really want to bring together leadership, wellness, to have sort of, success being integral to having meaning in their lives and living with purpose and with passion. So it's, somehow a holistic approach to business and to careers and to work life. It's really about bringing everything together, and especially the spiritual element.
I want to ask you this. When did you first embark on your spiritual journey?
So I was very young. So I come from an Asian background. I'm Indian. My family lineage is Indian. And so growing up, I sort of had the best of both worlds, this sort of Indian spirituality and the English Western academia. And so to bring it all together, I would say, I really became conscious that other people were not like me. When I would speak with other people, they would be sort of a bit taken aback at who I was or how I was. And I was very curious. I'd be asking them questions that, in the Western world, it was like, oh, you don't ask those sort of questions. I'd be very probing about who people were and what they were interested in, what made them happy and what made them, feel. And I would talk about feelings a lot, and it was a big no-no. And that's when I realized I was probably sort of somewhat different. And that's when, it sort of occurred to me later on in life that there was sort of my spiritual background and my spiritual sort of interest, because I always used to think about, well, what happens beyond this world? And why are we doing what we're doing? And why is there poverty in certain parts of the world, like India, and there isn't the same level of poverty in England, for example? So all these questions would go around in my mind. And it's later on that I got a term to sort of put to it, which was spirituality. But I'd say I was pretty much always that way inclined.
I love that you have a heart focus to your practice, heart intelligence, and just in general. I want to see if you could share with our audience a little about your theory about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, growing up, I studied psychology, majored in psychology. And I remember thinking everybody keeps talking about the brain and cognition and motivation and how it all comes from the brain and how we have to study the brain and we have to study behavior. And I was like, yeah, but there's an element that's missing here, and that's the heart. And, going back sort of 30 odd years, everybody was like, well, no, you leave heart out of it. Heart is all about emotion. And we don't bring that into academia, we don't bring that into education, and we certainly don't bring it into business. And being a rebel as I am, I was like, well, no, that's not going to quite cut it for me. So I really started looking into the heart and trying to understand it. A lot of it was poetry and Sufism, the sort of more spiritual, more Eastern kind of mystical practices. But everything that I read made perfect sense about human behavior, about human psychology, about motivation, all the things that I was studying that I found incredibly boring at the time because of the sort of, the spin was very sort of factual and evidence-based and empirical studies. And then I was reading all this mystical stuff, right? And then the mystical stuff was the thing that really, really spoke to me. And I found that when I was trying to apply my psychology to work, I wasn't doing as well. And when I started bringing heart into it and started really speaking from my heart and taking a chance with things that people were like, no, you don't talk about things like, confidence really being about being authentic and being true to yourself. That I'm talking about years ago. And I was like, but that comes from the heart. And when I started doing that, I found that actually people really resonated with it. You couldn't sell it to them as a course, but when I started speaking from my heart, when I started speaking about how it has an impact, so many people were like, oh my God, yeah, that resonates and that's so true and that works for me and I love it and I love what you're saying. And I started trusting my own instinct, my own intuition. And with clients, I found results, and what they would repeatedly say was, you're not a normal psychologist. And I love coming to you. I've seen other psychologists and you're different. And they couldn't put their finger on what was different. But I knew that it was because what I was doing was about bringing real heart into the space. And I was talking from the heart. I was talking about heart. I was really connecting them with their hearts. And I coined it as a heart-based approach to psychotherapy. And it really worked. And now I'm working sort of within the corporate world, really bringing heart into the corporate space, which is what omnipreneurship is all about, how we tap into the heart, not just the mind, not just about the facts, not just about, structures and what we know, but how we can tap into this subtlety of the world that we live in, the invisible, the things we don't know, the mysterious, but that are real, tangible if you were able to tune into it using other senses than just, the ones that connect us to the physical world.
As you were just explaining that, I loved your explanation, by the way. I free associate sometimes when we do our interview, I'll write down some words that strike me as in line with what you're saying. And I got for heart, I got greater vulnerability, opening up emotionally, passionate, authenticity, sincerity, and having faith. And the reason I bring this up to you, that's my observations of heart as you were talking in your explanation.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, when it comes to following a heart-focused approach, would it require one to let their walls down, have greater vulnerability, and to really work on their passion at being authentic? What's your views on that?
All of the above. So I would say, first of all, in order to be vulnerable, we have to turn what we consider to be weaknesses into strengths. And when you really look at it through the lens of spirituality, when you look at it through the lens of the whole picture, there's always a beautiful reason why we are the way we are, why we've experienced certain things, why we've experienced them, why life is the way that it is. And when we really are able to turn it into a strength, we no longer see it as a negative vulnerability. So it's not something that weakens us, it's something that adds character to who we really are. So I definitely think we need to be more vulnerable, and we need to stop protecting our hearts so much and trust our hearts to protect us rather than the other way around. We have learned, to protect our hearts, shutting down and building a wall around it and being ultra cautious when it comes to things like, being ourselves, being authentic, being true to ourselves. And when we really trust our hearts, it won't really let us down. And that's what vulnerability is to me. Vulnerability is really trusting our inner self and our inner knowingness. But in order to do that, I think we have to know ourselves. And I think if we want to be authentic, it means doing a deep dive, a lot of self-reflection, getting some support in really getting to know who we are. Because a lot of who we think we are is based on a lot of conditioning. And we're constantly bombarded with, so many things growing up, from our parents to our peers, our friends, our schools, our society, our governments, everything shapes us. And I think we have to be willing to do the work to really, really discover who we really are and not be afraid of being that. So again, vulnerability comes into that. Only then can we find that confidence to really be authentic. Because when we really know who we are and we're not shaken by outside forces. So, for example, if I say, well, I believe in the heart, and somebody says, oh, no, that's just rubbish. You can't be talking about heart in business. If I'm shaken by that, then it means that I don't really know who I am. Whereas if I know who I am, I'm going to be, well, you've got your path and I've got mine. And, we're both going in the same direction. Ultimately, we both want to grow and we both want to be successful and happy and all the rest of it, all of humanity, we all want the same things ultimately. It's just my way of getting there is different to yours. When we know ourselves, I think we're able to be far more authentic. And when we're far more authentic, we give others permission to do the same, because we don't need to judge them. We don't need to sit there and go, well, you're not like me, therefore you must be bad. We go, well, you're not like me, and that's okay, because you've got your path.
I feel you're very intuitive yourself. Growing up, did you feel at an early age that you had intuition? How did you manifest it? Like, what did you do with your earliest experiences when you realized that you were picking up information probably the average person wasn't as aware of as you were?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wouldn't have called it intuition at the time. I would have said I was just more perceptive. But yeah, I think, it really endeared me to a lot of people. And, I found that, I would have thought that, growing up in sort of not speaking the language when I first came to the country, I was about 4 or 5. So having to adjust to speaking English, and I would have thought that I wouldn't necessarily fit in with people and I would be the oddball and very shy, very quiet. But I think that because I was able to see people, not only the children, but I think even the teachers, and then as I grew up, of course, at work, it became a real strength. I think they really, really appreciated that. I was just able to name things that they weren't able to name. I was just able to
pick up on things, right? Like an empath. Yeah.
Exactly, an empath, and articulate it as well. So because it wasn't my first language, I think I probably really took to it, and I loved it, and I loved English, and I loved reading. And so to be able to articulate how people feel, to be able to see them, and to be able to see what they haven't even named themselves or owned in themselves, I think is wonderful, because of course I was able to put it in a beautifully diplomatic way. I was never confrontational. I was never threatening. I think my demeanor, I'm softly spoken, had a gentleness about me. So I think it was really well received. And for me, I honestly did not for the longest time think it was anything unusual. As only as when people kept commenting on it and kept on saying things, and I was like, oh, okay, is this unusual to be intuitive, to pick up on these things, to be an empath?
So I get off your energy. I get you as an empath. I see you as somebody who's very good at getting people open up over time and working with people who might be like trauma victims or people who can't or are not in touch with their emotions, I feel like you're a great person to help them get back in touch with their inner self, their emotional side. And I feel like that's your gift, that's your talent. And I feel like as you go on in your career, you still have longevity. And I feel like as you go on in your career, that's going to be stronger of a heart-focused message with your clients and with the world. I feel like there's going to be more of what you're going to do that you've already done, but you're going to be doing a lot more of it, basically, is what I see. Greater influence.
Absolutely. And I think this is the thing that I really recognizing that I want to be doing moving forward, working. When I said that I would just call out things when I was very young, I would call things out. And that's what I mean. It's the trauma. Instead of waiting for ages for somebody to open up and share, I would just go right there. I'd be like, oh my God, you sound like you've had a terrible time with your dad recently. And they'd be like, how do you know? So that kind of thing. Now you take that into life. So that would be with friends or with, when I was very young. But you take that into life and, we need more of that. We need people who cut to the chase, who are able to say, your business is struggling and I can see why, because you've got this problem, this problem, this problem. And for them to go, okay, we don't have to spend months and months doing an analysis of, figuring out what's wrong. We can just cut to the chase, have you come in, spend a couple of hours with us, check it out and go, yeah, this is what's going on. How do we solve it? Because often we're so good in certainly, the world today, modern world, we're so good at hiding things. We're so good at being ashamed of things. We don't want the world to see that there are problems or there's trauma or there's hurt. And I just think, why not?
It's good to show your vulnerabilities. It's good to admit when you're overwhelmed. It's good, like for mental health awareness, since you're a psychologist, I'd studied that in college, psychology, but I would just say this. It's good to tell people, yeah, I suffer from depression and anxiety. Not that you're ashamed of it. I do. Not that I'm ashamed of it, but because I want to remove the stigma from it. And I figured if I could expose my vulnerabilities and tell the public through my show or whatever I decide to do, that yes, I have suffered from depression, anxiety in my life. I can say it while I'm smiling because I don't feel ashamed about it. I don't feel like there's a stigma we need with it.
Absolutely. And I would say, and when you really understand it, there's nothing to be ashamed of, because all it means is that, you're living in a world where who you really are is in conflict with a lot of what's going on in the world, and the world isn't necessarily right, and so when we really get to that, it's like, there's so much beauty in really owning the truth of all of who we are, because there's always a solution to what we consider are problems, because I don't think they're problems. It's just about how we see it, how we feel it, how we experience it, and how we're taught, be with it, how we're taught to respond to it. And like you say, mental health awareness, the kind of feeling has been that we have to be ashamed of these feelings, and it's like
don't talk about it, right? Like don't talk about
it. Don't say you have it, for God's sake. Put a smile on your face and go out there and get over it. Which is crazy. Yeah.
I mean, when you're looking at the pandemic right now and you're seeing, like in the United States especially, you see this conflict, everything, right? Everything's conflict oriented right now. We have this extremism that's happening. We've got people refusing to wear masks because they believe it's a political statement and an infringement on their personal rights and individual liberties. And in reality, we're trying to manage a health crisis that's global in origin, that's killing thousands by the day in the United States. And we've had more deaths from COVID than we've had from anything else as a country, from what I understand. Yet our country is more divided now than it ever was. I don't think anyone could have done anything different to change the division. And I think that a large part of that division is from the number 44 in our White House, Trump. But looking at things right now, when I see the future, I think that a heart-based approach might be one of the best things we need to heal our society from within and to heal one another. And I wanted to ask you, if you were able to, say, take an approach like yours and apply it to our society, what kind of things would you tell our audience that we could do through a heart approach to benefit and change things within ourselves to help improve our unity?
This is where I would say that, if we use what's happening in the world with this COVID situation, one of the things that I say is that we have to learn to really, really hear the truth. There's so much disinformation. There's so much misinformation. And there's so much propaganda going on, one way or another. There is so much, and it depends which side of the fence you're on, how you're going to see the other side. And it's that division that I think that the only way to bridge that gap, if you think of it in terms of heart, mind, body, for me, there is one set of arguments, which is, all the science-based, and I say in inverted commas, because having been a scientist myself, I know that science is not all what it's cracked up to be, because compared to ancient wisdom, science is nothing. Science is a small part of ancient wisdom that has been around forever, and science is catching up, and it's got a long, long way to go. So if you think of science being head, if you think about too far the other extreme being the gut, then the heart is the center of, the gut, the instinct, the fear response that comes both from sometimes the gut and the head. They both come from fear, because emotionally we can be fearful, factually we can be fearful. And I think that's what we're experiencing. We're experiencing two sets of facts, and both of them are coming from fear. There's resistance on both sides, whereas the heart knows the truth. And we've got to go into the heart, because it's about context. It's about being able to step into what is right for us as a society, but as an individual. But in a way, recognizing that each individual is collective. So we're not individuals completely. We have our uniqueness, but we also are interrelated and interconnected with each and every living being. And so therefore, when you make a decision, I make a decision, it impacts you and I are across the pond, but what you feel, what I feel, it impacts everything and everyone in between us, right? When we have this conversation, everyone is getting impacted, whether they're listening to the show, whether they're going to listen to it, whether they, know somebody who will. Everyone is being impacted somehow. So what we need to do is find the truth. And the truth is somewhere in between the two. The truth is not one or the other.
That's a very valid point you raise. When you say that, I think of the heart as like the harmonizing aspect of everything, right?
Absolutely.
Taking it from your head and your gut and bringing it together so that you're in unison.
Exactly.
I could see that pretty well. I'd like to ask you this. When you're walking about in the daily world right now, and I can tell you're very deep and you have a lot of healing energy to you that's very positive to help people with, but I can say you're very deep. I can see that. When you're around in the UK right now with different things that have happened in the last year and a half with the pandemic, how do you feel society is dealing in the UK, for example, because that's where you are right now, your point of reference? How do you feel your society has been collectively addressing the new normal that we've all been dealing with on our own level?
Well, I would say the biggest problem is, as I said, the misinformation. And I would say they're traumatized. Everyone, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're sitting on, everyone is traumatized, because it has created so much conflict within families. It has created so much conflict, within peer groups, at work. It has created so much conflict. And the reason, I would say, is quite simply lack of transparency. There is not transparency. There has been a shutdown of real honest debate and honest conversation. And for me, heart is about communication. See, I believe that what the heart does, like you say, it is a harmonizer, but it is also, it is wise. So it's not about intelligence, it's wisdom. It has incredible wisdom, and therefore it really knows what's going on, even when we don't. So I know what you're feeling, whether you tell me or not, from my heart level. If I'm really conscious, then my mind will know it as well, and my body will know it. But my heart absolutely knows the truth, and your heart knows the truth, and everybody's heart knows the truth, whether we are conscious of it or not. Now, where there's lots of things being withheld and lots of information being withheld and lots of debates being shut down and lots of conversations being shut down, if we don't have honest, open communication, if we don't have transparency, there is no trust. And if there is no trust, then we are going to be divided. And if we are divided, there's going to be conflict. It's as simple as that. So how do we change that? We change that by actually demanding genuine, open, honest conversation and transparency, to not shut things down, to have those conversations with any situation, because at the heart of any conflict is misunderstanding, miscommunication. And when you have open, honest communication and conversations, you will eradicate the division. You may still disagree, but at least you will disagree going, I don't agree with you. However, I respect your point of view because what you shared with me makes sense, but it's not for me. And that's very different to how dare you think like that? You are so wrong. And how dare you threaten my existence with your thinking? Because that's what conflict is. Conflict is where we feel threatened by what somebody else thinks. And I think we feel threatened because we think there's a judgment there, and it's not necessarily the case.
And if we could keep more of an open mind.
Yes.
And if we look at de-escalating a situation rather than escalating it or ramping it up, right?
Absolutely.
And I love the way you phrased it. You said conflict connects to misunderstanding and misinformation. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about where we are right now as a globe, right? We have tons of that misinformation. It's like a virus itself.
Exactly.
And so anything we could do to try to bridge those gaps, I feel like we would need to take a heart-centered
Yes.
approach, bridge the gap. We need you. We need more of people like you right now to
Absolutely.
impact in a positive way what we're dealing with, because I think that's how important it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And more people to really step into their heart and feel the truth without judgment, without judgment, just really feeling into the truth and really asking the universe, if you like, that faith that you talked about right at the beginning, asking for the universe to really, really help tune into what is genuinely right. What is the truth in the situation? Because we're not getting the truth on so many levels, and we need the truth. And if we don't get the truth, the trauma sits in our body, the trauma sits in our hearts, and that trauma creates chaos in our world. And that's what we're experiencing. It's not about the sort of division around masks, not masked, vaccination, not vaccination. It is about the fact that our hearts are in chaos. Our hearts are chaotic. We have been fed so much fear instead of positive information as to what's going on and what we need to do about it and how we can best protect ourselves. But don't convince us to do something from a place of fear, because I'll tell you, when we do something from a place of fear, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
And that's such an important point you raise, fear, because fear is, I believe it incapacitates us. I believe it freezes us. I believe it repels us. And it does everything counterproductive to what we should be trying to do during these trying times. And it's easier said than done to tell someone, have courage. Don't be afraid. Being fearful is part of our survival mechanism. You try to hide if you're afraid of a predator.
Yes.
And so within ourselves, we have that type of fight or flight response. When you're presented with a threat, like a virus or misinformation or whatever, fear creates, and it grows upon itself.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I'd like to ask you is, how do we reverse the cycle when it starts turning in the wrong direction? Fear is being turned out. Do we need to work on building trust in order to combat that? Or what do you suggest?
I would say coming back to love. We need to come back to love, because, you can't build trust when there's a lot of fear.
Sure.
And how we come back to that space and place of love is really, really recognizing that anything that comes at us that creates fear is not true. Anything that comes at us that creates fear in us doesn't come from a place of truth. The truth is always something that resonates love, resonates beauty, and resonates consciousness. And so we really, really want to tune into that. And how we can do that is really tapping into gratitude, tapping into the things we are grateful for, people we're grateful for, people we love, and really allowing that vibration of love to grow rather than being bombarded with the fear messages. There are too many fear messages in the world. It's been constant for decades, but it's really been ramped up with this virus, because if you think about how we were first told about the virus, in your country as well as my country, I know because I was following the whole, what was going on in America a lot.
Oh my God. Remember that? It was like you turn the TV on, they're like, we're shutting the country down, we're shutting the world down.
Exactly.
I just remember, I feel like I was in a movie.
Don't go out of your house. Don't see your granny. Don't hug her. For God's sake, you're going to kill her.
I felt like it was a zombie apocalypse at first.
Right? That's what you imagine. You imagine you would step out on the street and there were going to be zombies, after 10 o'clock. We had curfew, 10 o'clock, it's like, oh God, that was badly managed. There's a way of spreading love. And I tell you, the way it would have been was, listen, we've got this situation. We don't know quite how to contain it because it's a virus unlike anything we've seen before. And so therefore, we need to do something different. And we're suggesting that it might be a good idea for people to just isolate, to stay at home, to be with loved ones. If you need to get around and go and be with people you love, then that's what we're suggesting you do for at least the next couple of weeks, maybe a month, whatever they were planning. There's a way of saying it that would have made everybody feel really, really supported in this situation.
It's everybody run.
Exactly. Hide, shut the doors, don't open the windows. In Australia, I don't know if you heard, they're like, close windows, do not open windows. What, are you crazy? Oh, that's crazy, right?
Absolutely. And, that's interesting you say that, because when I think about all the stuff we were just talking about, I spend a lot of time by myself. I've learned to appreciate alone time. I'll say that said, I'm looking forward to the return of being in groups and being around people again in the future. I'm still being very cautious, even though I got vaccinated, because we see this Delta variant is tricky. I wanted to ask you, during the pandemic, how did that change your views of alone time for yourself?
It's a great question. I mean, listen, different people are going to handle it differently. Again, I would say, some people really needed better support during that time. For me, I love it. I'm a meditator. I can sit for hours at an end and meditate and be on my own and be in my own space. And so I wasn't alone, thank God. But, I'm fine. And I think what it did for people was it gave them an opportunity, whether they took it or not, to really, really spend time with themselves. We're living in a world that's become increasingly fast, and people are just so busy doing stuff and busy responding to the externals all the time. And one of the things I repeatedly tell people, that if you want to be healthy, if you want to feel well, if you want to be successful, you have to spend time on your own. You have to reflect, you have to meditate, go inward, that internal journey. And so it was a great opportunity for people to do that. Yeah. It really was. And if people utilized it, if they were able to, you see, unfortunately, we live in a world where it wasn't always possible. For some people, it was more work, because for some people, it was like they were still working and they had children at home, or they had people they were caring for, or whatever else was going on. So it was not always an easy time, but I think it was good that we shut off the outside world for a little bit. I really think we probably needed that to appreciate being at home, being with family, being, alone if we were alone, enjoying that solitude, cooking and not just going out. I'm sure lots of people do takeaways. I think it's a good thing. I think we need more of that. And I do genuinely believe that we should have a 4-hour working week. I do. Yeah. So that. I
like the 4-hour working week idea. You mean 4-day working week?
Sorry, 4 days.
I don't mind 4 hours.
Well, listen, I'm giving myself away here. That's what I really believe in. But hey.
That's a lot of love, right?
Right.
Tell us about your podcast. What motivated you to create it, and share with our audience?
Really just about being able to spread these sort of ideas and these sorts, you think about being on social media, and the only people who see you on social media are the ones who are already following you. And, to really be able to reach out to other people, to have conversations. One of the things that I was already doing before the lockdown was, connecting with people on LinkedIn and having conversations, setting up calls, and for no other reason, no agenda.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing right now. We're just putting on a show, but we're basically having an amazing conversation, having a call.
And that's what
across
drew
the
me
pond.
to it. Exactly. You get to know other people and just have conversations with them. And what's amazing is you learn so much from that, and they hopefully learn something from you. So I think it's so important. I love it. We're living in a global sort of world. We are, we're all connected. And so it's nice that we're able to connect with people who are different from us, have different views, have different, interests, different things to share. And so, yeah, for me, it's just wonderful.
How do you think we can better align our heart, mind, and body?
I think we can better align it by doing that inner work. I don't care what anyone says. If we want to be successful in any area of our lives, inner work is a must. It absolutely is, because all the while we're carrying stuff that doesn't belong to us, whether it's thoughts, whether it's feelings, whether it's memories, whether it's, beliefs that we've been passed down to us, through society, through our communities, through life institutions, etc. We lose that connection with ourselves. And when we're not connected to our hearts and we're very cerebral, we're very mental, it causes a disconnect from our body. So if we want to align the mind and the body and the heart, all of them are integrated anyway. They all work as one. We have learned to compartmentalize it. And I think in order to come back to alignment, the first thing we have to recognize that alignment is where success lives. That is where prosperity lives. That is where true happiness, true love, true joy exists.
Balance.
Yeah. We cannot know those experiences without being aligned. So when you look at somebody and you go, how come their life is just always flowing? How come they are always successful? How come things work out? I would say things work out for people who are aligned. Some people naturally know how to do that. Some people have to work at it. Some people have to work really hard at it. But it's always worth it, because when we know that true alignment, then everything flows, because life is always flowing and it is always guiding us. The heart always guides us towards what is for our best interest. The heart is always guiding us towards our destiny. It is always guiding us towards the truth of who we really are. And when we are able to really, really tune in to the heart, then the alignment with the body and the mind happen organically. Connect with the heart. We have to really do the work to know who we are.
I love that. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I was going to say this. As you were just saying that, I was thinking alignment, and then I thought of sacred geometry, and I thought how most things in nature have a certain alignment to them. And so if we were to take our lesson from nature, since we are part of nature and the universe and we're all one, then the best way to order our lives would be to have some type of alignment within it, so that we would then be more part of nature and be in alignment with it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the things I repeatedly say, that, we are part of nature and nature is a part of us. And it's our disconnect from nature that has disconnected us from our own true nature. And so we do need to connect with nature, and we need to connect with nature more than just having a holiday and sitting on a beach or going to the park on a beautiful day. It's about really aligning with nature, all of nature. There's so much more to nature than just time out.
What do you think is the significance of passion and purpose?
I think those arise out of being really centered in our hearts. I think when we know who we are, we know what drives our passion, and we know that we have a purpose. Each of us are uniquely created. Each living organism is uniquely created and has a specific purpose. Now, a lot of people think of purpose being career. It's like, what's my purpose? I got to find my job. What am I here to do? And I would say that's just not the case. I think our purpose is like so many layers. There is a purpose in fulfilling ourselves as an individual, fulfilling our roles, within the family structure, whatever that looks like for us, fulfilling who we are in terms of what we're here to give and what we're here to receive. It's not just about how am I here to be of service for the world, but it's also what am I here to receive from the world? Because, we know in nature, everything is about give and take. We release our breath and we breathe in oxygen and we release carbon monoxide, dioxide. And why are we doing that? We're doing that because there's a give and take. And
it's a balance.
Right? Exactly.
In its perfect state, it's a balance until we, of course, distort that through carbon emissions. Then you're out of balance. Now we're out of balance. That's why we're having all these issues.
Exactly. We're disconnected from the heart because we've been too cerebral. We thought we could control everything. And the heart's going, no, I don't think so. You're going to have to come back into balance. And hence the diseases, etc. And so purpose is really about knowing who we are and understanding that we are here for a much, much higher reason. And that higher reason is to really heal aspects of ourselves that have become traumatized, frozen in fear, that have become frozen in that which is not true, coming back to the truth. Because when we come back to the truth, then we are on purpose, and our purpose can be something as simple as just changing somebody's life simply by smiling at them. You don't know that you smiling at somebody on the street isn't exactly what you were put here on earth for, because that could be the difference between life or death for them. We just don't know the impact we can have on somebody. And that's something I have definitely learned, with the work that I do. Just small things that people hold on to that create so much trauma and stress. And it's sometimes the little things that somebody does or something that happens that can change all of that. And we can change the world we're living in an instant, in a heartbeat, if we are willing to really simply connect to our hearts and recognize their importance in our life, not just as something that continues pumping blood to the rest of our body and our organs, but something that actually has meaning, connecting us to the meaning that we're here to have.
One thing I'll say as you're explaining this is think of intelligence with the brain. You look at the brain as an organ of the body. You don't see intelligence, right? You don't see cognitive ability. When we look at the heart, we just see something pumping blood. We think that's all it is. But why can't we think that the heart has emotional intelligence, has deeper meaning, has like all those things we're passionate about, we're excited about, and we start getting really hyper and excited about things that might come from our heart intelligence. It may come from that part of the body. And who are we to say that? Just like intelligence doesn't exist in the brain, but from looking at it from the physical realm, we're just learning about the mechanics of the brain right now. I think the heart is future. We're going to decipher more of this stuff that we're talking about today through science, maybe 30, 40 years down the road. I wouldn't doubt it takes that long, but that's the level of understanding as you're explaining this to me and I'm learning from our conversation. Intuitively, I'm thinking, make the analogy that if you look at someone's brain, a picture of it, you can't see the intelligence of the brain. That's how we should look at the heart. You can't judge it from what you see. You got to look at it deeper and connect to it deeper. No pun intended on connecting, but we should really start understanding the heart for more of its dynamic role in our lives than just an organ that pumps blood, or that we have to make sure we don't have anything clogged in.
Absolutely. And what's clogging it is the emotional. What's clogging it is stuff that's been held inside that we haven't been able to metabolize or process. And when we start to understand it, you're right, I think heart is the future for sure. And when we really come to understand it, we'll understand why we've been out of balance. And we will come back to that balance naturally. But, that's where we have to really expand our awareness and expand our consciousness and expand our understanding. And that's where passion comes into it. For me, passion is very, very much about, creative expression. Passion is, when something, there's a creative impulse in us and it expresses itself through excitement, through joy, through, genuine interest, curiosity. That is what passion is. And I think we need a passion-filled life. Every day we need to wake up to something that fuels that passion, that makes us excited to be alive, excited to grow, excited to evolve. And where we've got stuck is structures that keep us stuck in doing the same thing again and again and again. And that kills the human spirit and it kills the human heart. And the heart is pushing to say no. We need passion, and passion isn't about a one-time thing. Passion is really something we should all wake up and have that sense of drive, that purpose that is fueled with passion, that is fueled with excitement, that is fueled with joy, because that is what allows us to evolve and continue growing, and because life is always expanding. We're not stationary. Life is not stationary.
That's our aging. Our body changes every minute, every second we age. That's just the vehicle we're in. But the spiritual part is like the Cadbury egg. The stuff inside the eggs, our spirit inside our body is how I look at it, right? We have an outer shell that we feel is all of what we are. Well, it's not. And we get to go somewhere else. We get reunited with our maker. I do have to raise this question to you. Mm-hmm. Creativity. It's something that I've discovered with my show. And I didn't realize I had a passion for creativity when it comes to podcasting, but it's something like to come up with the ideas for episodes or just create things as a result of my show. And it's been something that I love more than anything else. And so for me, I feel like I found a meaning and purpose from a passion. I want to ask you, aside from the stuff you already do, what do you find that you love that gives you meaning and purpose that you haven't shared with an audience in public before? That's something you're very passionate about.
Really and honestly, I am passionate about changing the world. I absolutely am passionate about changing the world. I believe we were never meant to live in a world full of strife, full of struggle, with so much, as I said, from when I was young, with the levels of poverty and stresses and the diseases and all of that. It's not what the world was made for. We have created that through our lack of awareness, through our lack of consciousness, through our lack of connection to heart. And I'm really, really passionate about really spreading the information about the heart, not just as a career. Yes, it's part of my job, but really, I could speak to people about it all day, every day, if people would listen and just say, wake up, it is time for heart. It is time for heart renaissance. And because that's where all the good things lie. We deserve to live in a world where there is harmony, where there is joy, where we are growing with real excitement, with a sense of purpose, where we are healthy and we die naturally in old age, because that's how our bodies are created. We know this. We know that our bodies have ability. We don't need to age the way we are, but we are because of, like you say, all the things that we're putting in our body. And it's not necessarily through choice, all the toxic air and all the sort of, lack of organic foods because the soil's depleted. See, for me, all of this comes back to when we are able to step into our hearts, we start making different choices. We start making more love-filled choices. And the more love-filled choices we make, the more we take care of not only ourselves, but the people around us as well as the planet. And that is what absolutely fills me with joy and passion. And that's what I'm here to do, to serve in any way that I can to help people realign with their hearts.
That's so powerful too. Think about it. The power behind that, having the ability to not only take stock for yourself, but to do it for the larger whole.
Absolutely.
That's such a noble purpose. We need so much more of that right now. Absolutely. I want to ask you this. How would our audience reach out to you?
So 2 ways. One, I'm on social media. LinkedIn is my preferred social media platform, but I'm also on Instagram. But I have a website, which is hemavyas.com. But I also have a community, Heart Renaissance, and it's free to join. And there's lots of meditations and amazing talks like this, with yourself. And there's lots of different things there that, people can tap into and connect with in community. And so if they go to my website, they'll be able to join my community called Heart Renaissance there.
Excellent. Excellent. I have to ask you this. It's such a great topic to talk about the heart and to talk about transparency and to talk about authenticity. And for me, we need to have more conversations about this stuff because it's increasing awareness of these topics that we really need to get abreast of so we can connect better with each other.
Absolutely.
And I want to ask you this about the power of letting go, because I feel like that's a superpower we all have within ourselves, but not many know and understand how to really use it. For myself, for example, during the pandemic, I was able to forgive my dad, who I didn't have a relationship with during his entire life. We just never had a relationship. And so in death, he reached out to me in dreams. And I finally decided to go through the process of not only letting go of any negativity during the past, but to forgive. And now I feel like I have a better relationship with my dad. At least I feel lighter. I feel like it's a superpower we could all tap into. And I wanted to ask you, I know we just talked a little about letting go and forgiving, but I wanted to ask you, in terms of your heart center focus, how powerful do you believe forgiveness is?
I think it's incredibly powerful, but I think even more than forgiveness, I think it's understanding. You see, there's never anything to forgive from my perspective, but of course we have to get to a place of forgiveness. But it's more about really, really understanding, when to really let go. I can say I forgive something or someone, but to really let go, when I really understand that there was never any bad intent. When we go through certain experiences that hurt us, we hold on to, hurt, anger, rage, whatever it might be. And that's where we need forgiveness. But actually, when we go beyond forgiveness and we go into a space and place of really truly understanding the true nature of what happened, why that situation occurred, why was it that you didn't have that relationship with your dad, what was really going on for him, what was the culmination of his experiences that brought him to this space where he wasn't able to have that relationship with you, and what were your soul's reason, what was your heart reason for not being able to have a relationship with him. There's always a bigger picture, and that's what I mean. The heart contains wisdom, and so it goes beyond the here and now. Forgiveness is about the here and now, and our 3D world. And I think understanding and getting to the truth is sort of more 5D. It's beyond this physical world. And when we really get to that, we realize that we do forgive, but actually there's no need for forgiveness, because whatever happened for the best.
It's always a learning experience, no matter what it is. It makes us stronger. It makes us better. Whether we see it at the time or not, it does help us evolve and grow and connect with one another.
Absolutely.
One last question for you. If you were a spirit animal, which spirit animal would you be and why?
Well, I have to say two. So one of them would definitely be a jaguar, and the other would be a husky, a beautiful husky. So one, because they're incredibly independent and powerful, and that's definitely me. And the other, because they're pack animals and they love that sense of belonging, and yet, again, independent. So I would say, both of them resonate. But there's definitely that sense of independence and not being afraid to stand out, but equally, having that sense of belonging and that sense of that gentle power, I think.
I love that. I just want to thank Hema for coming on the show today and sharing her viewpoints. And I think it's great when you can have someone come on and talk about heart wisdom, human consciousness, spirituality, all blended, while we also talk about real life situations. And that's what I think Hema's really good at, is communicating and helping us connect with each other. It's important that we take heed of how important the heart is in our lives, how important as a part of us holistically, the heart plays a very important role. And when you think about our challenges in terms of where we are right now as a society, our passion, our ability to be vulnerable, our ability to be sincere and authentic, those are attributes we need dire right now. We're in dire demand of that. We need to have these things to be authentic and real and connect deeper than just a superficial level. And guess what? When we connect, we create greater understanding. You know what else we get rid of? Fear. And when we get rid of fear, we build love, we build trust. It's not a complex equation for us to live a better life or to feel more in tune with ourselves. I think each of us could be a heart whisperer in our own way if we pay attention to what Hema's telling us. Listen to your heart. It's a song from many years ago, but it's also a very important statement. When you're dealing with things and challenges, try to think of situations that can create better alignment with your heart, mind, and body intelligence. Optimize your creativity, your critical thinking, and see if you could tie all these things together. Because when you do, I believe you'll feel more connected and more able to respond to life's challenges. Let's work on building a better planet from within, one heart at a time. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. All of Hema's information will be in the show notes. Stay positive, because when you're positive, anything's possible. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Social Psychic Radio Show. Don't forget to join us for another episode next time. If you enjoyed the show, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. You can also check us out on Facebook, and don't forget to visit the Social Psychic YouTube channel. Until next time, it's a big world out there. Keep an open mind, embrace your paradigms, and know that the universe is always yours to explore.